Welcome back, everybody, and happy Sip+Tip Tuesday. I am so excited that you guys decided to join me back for a second episode of Sip+Tip Tuesday. So I am Gabrielle Victoria, and every week I'll be bringing you tips on different topics about just how I have gotten through them and what I think has been some really great, helpful thoughts and quotes and tips for me. And I'm going to share them with you. And I bring to you sips. A sip of the week, which is a beverage or a drink that I think has some health benefits, that has some taste benefits, or is it just a fun drink to include in the show? So thanks for joining me again, and let's get right into it. So let's get into our sip of the week. So this week I have mango juice, but it's in a really special glass. This glass is actually hand blown and handmade in Cabo San Lucas. It's a sweet spot for me because I go there every year with my family. And I found this glass blowing factory, these beautiful artisans. They collect old, dejected glass bottles that have been scattered and discarded in the streets, and they meld it together at extreme temperatures and literally design different pieces of art that are usable. And these glasses come in all different shapes and sizes, but I have begun to collect them every year that we go. So I put my drink today in this glass. The drink is actually mango juice. And when I think of Cabo San Lucas, I think of mangoes, and I think of fresh fruits and freshly squeezed juices that feel so tropical. But I also know that mangoes are really good for your body. They aid in the digestive system, so they help cleanse you and they help get everything moving and shaking the way that it needs to. And it's also really good to boost your immune system because it contains a lot of vitamin C. So get you some mango juice. This is mango nectar, but if you want to squeeze some mangoes into a cup, go for it. So that's the sip of the week. Our tip of the week is based on the topic of fear. Sometimes it can be daunting and scary and big and paralyzing, and we know that fear stops us from doing a lot of the things that we may otherwise do or want to do or desire to do. So I want to talk this week about practical steps that I've taken of how to overcome our fear and how to train our minds to be stronger than the fear. Because we know that a lot of the things that happen are in our imaginations or from things that we've seen and heard in other people's lives that we've now attributed to our lives. And it may not always be rooted in actual reality. And that's fine, that's okay. We have an imagination for a reason, but just being able to train our minds to be able to know the difference and be able to still make decisions in our own best interest without the shackles of fear. So one thing I learned when coming up with this content for this episode, I learned that we're actually only born with two fears. Biologically, only two fears come with us when we come into the world. And that's the fear of falling and the fear of loud noises. Now you may say to yourself, what in the world? Those are two of the most random fears and they're not even that scary. Yeah, no. When I heard this, I was absolutely taken aback because as long as I can remember, those have never been fears of mine. In fact, all of the fears I have are the opposite of those. And so that taught me that there's hope actually. Every other fear outside of those two is taught. It's a learned fear. We've acquired it over time. It was not born into our DNA. We were not brought into the world with it. It's able to be untaught, unlearned, and reversed. So I just want to bring you some hope that your fear is not the end all be all. So with that, I want to give you guys tip number one. So tip number one is write it out. Now it sounds trivial. It sounds pointless. But we first know in order to overcome a thing, we have to first confront a thing. And writing it out is putting words to what it is you are afraid of. Because if it's up here in your mind and in your imagination, sometimes it can grow wings and become bigger. And we know our imagination is so colorful and it does its own thing. But when you write it out or when you say it out loud and verbalize it, you now begin to hear it for what it is. And when you hear that fear, one of two things can happen. It could actually sound less intimidating when you see it on a piece of paper or when you hear it, or you can realize, okay, this is a legitimate fear that I really want to overcome. So one of two things can happen, and those two things are both steps in the right direction. So I encourage you to write it out, whatever it is you're afraid of. That's tip number 1. Tip number 2, plan it out. So now that you know and you've articulated what it is that you're afraid of, now you can decide to put a little bit of motion into the ocean and start to work towards it. So planning out how I can avert the challenges and the failures associated with this fear, and how I can work towards making successful steps to overcome this fear. So planning it out may look like making a pros and cons list. This is what I am afraid of. This is why I am afraid of it. I can avoid this by doing the following things. Planning it out, it says, I am afraid to get in front of a crowd and speak. If I get in front of a crowd and speak, this is the worst thing that can happen. Here's what I can do to prevent that from happening. These are the steps that I can possibly take to prevent that from happening. Here's the ultimate goal that I want to happen. Here are the things that I can do to help ensure that that happens. And when you have those things side by side, it helps to make it just a little bit more manageable. So that's tip number 2, plan it out. Now, tip number 3, now that you planned it out, now that you've written it out, it's time to act it out. You've talked about it, you know exactly what it is, you've planned out all the different scenarios and how it can go and what you can do. Now it's time to put some acceleration behind the gas pedal. Put a little pressure on it. Literally, the worst thing that can happen is that you fail. And as my mom always says, failing is beautiful because you fail fast and you fail forward and you take those lessons and you do it again. And the most successful people in the world have failed so many times before they ever made it to where you know them to be right now. So act it out. You have a plan, you have a strategy, take some research, do whatever it is you need to do. If it's meditation, if it's therapy, if it's having a support system of people behind you, whatever it is that you deem necessary for you to be able to feel comfortable, feel brave, feel convicted enough to go for it, act it out. And if it doesn't go right the first time, make note of that. That's okay. That's all right. But you have to take action and conscientious steps towards your fears, or else you're going to wake up and life is going to have passed you by. And we don't want that. I know for me personally, I had a few fears as well. I had fears of rejection, fears of being alone, fears of not being liked. And it took me so long. I knew I always wanted to be an orator. I wanted to be a performer. I wanted to be an entertainer. And I allowed those fears of all the things, fear of the unknown, fear of rejection, fear of not being good enough, fear of not being liked, fear of not being pretty enough. I let all of that paralyze me for years. Until finally I grew and decided no more. What is the worst thing that can happen? And I wrote it out and I planned it out. And I decided after so much time, I'm gonna just put foot in motion and I'm just going to do it. And if it works, beautiful. And if it doesn't, at least I can say I tried. You never want to look back at your life and have regrets because of fear, something that was concocted in your mind. So I hope that these 3 tips helped. I hope that you are sipping on your mango juice and you're feeling a little bit better. Your things are all moving on the inside, feeling good. I hope that we all can use each other as think tanks and bouncing blocks to really overcome fear, because I know it's something that all of us struggle with, all of us have, and all of us want to overcome. So it makes us family. So I thank you guys for watching, and tune in next week. Make sure that you like and you subscribe so that you can stay in the know with all the new content that I'll be putting out. See you next week. Happy Sip and Tip Tuesday.